I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer this not in your head the way you answer things when you're moving fast, but slowly answer the question. When did you last do something that you didn't want to do and told yourself it was fine? Just a small, quiet yes when you meant to say no. A task you absorbed, a comment you let pass, a need you folded away because it just felt easier to keep moving. Most of us struggle with that question, not because it hasn't happened, but because it happens so often, we've stopped registering it. That's what I want to talk to you about today. The quiet ones, the ones that have become so familiar, you've started calling them just how things go, or, that's just the way things are. When most people hear the word tolerance, they think about conflict, about putting up with someone difficult or a situation that's clearly a problem. But the kind of tolerance I'm talking about is much quieter than that. It's the email you respond to at 10 p.m. because you've always responded to emails after hours, and now to stop, it would feel disruptive or off. It's absorbing a responsibility that was never formally assigned to you. It just slowly became yours, and you're good at it. So why not? It's staying in a conversational pattern with someone that consistently costs you something on the inside, but you navigate it with strength on the outside that it barely registers to the other person. It's not exaggerated, and to be honest, it doesn't feel like a problem on any given Tuesday. But here's what I've come to understand about the small tolerances. They accumulate silently, consistently, and over time, they start to shape the life you're living in ways you didn't consciously choose. If you let it go too far, you end up in a life that works, but not a life that feels like yours. And the gap between those two things is where a lot of quiet exhaustion lives. For me, in my season of misalignment, I started noticing this low level feeling, but I didn't have the language for it at the time. I was spending way too much energy picking up pieces, which ended up costing me my health in multiple ways. At that point, I had to ask myself if it made sense to keep carrying the things that are now costing me my health. In my relationships, I smoothed over friction before it became a big conversation, always attentive to everyone's emotions, often at the expense of my own feelings and my own expression. In my day-to-day, I'd say yes to things and then feel quietly resentful about them, which, if I'm being honest, told me everything that I needed to know. Resentment is almost always a signal that somewhere you said yes when you meant to say no. The moment things started to shift for me was when I stopped asking, what do I need to do differently for this person to be happy? And started asking, what have I been accepting that doesn't feel quite right? That's a completely different question, and it opens a very, very different door. So I call this a tolerance audit. It isn't about optimizing your life or creating a better system. Really, it's about honesty. It's a simple practice of looking clearly and without judgment at what you've been accepting and asking whether what you've been accepting is conscious or just automatic. Here's how I approach it. So step one is to observe. At the end of the week or right now, if you want to start, write down the 3 things you've tolerated that come to mind. The ones that feel or felt fine in the moment, but then left a small residue, a slight flatness, that low level drain that just made you go, I don't feel so great about that. So step 2, ask why. Did you accept it because it genuinely aligned with something you value? Or because it felt easier than the alternative? Or is it just because you didn't want to seem difficult? Or is it because you've always done it this way? None of these answers are wrong, but knowing the difference is what matters. Step 3, choose one of these reasons that you feel cost you the most. And then this will be the thing that you want to do differently next time. It doesn't have to be confrontational or a boundary conversation. Sometimes it's as simple as not volunteering for something you didn't want to do. Sometimes it's saying, I need help with this before you absorb the whole thing. The goal isn't to perfectly manage your life. The goal is to have a more conscious one. So what does it look like? Tolerance might look like taking on a task for someone else because saying no feels uncomfortable. Even when your plate is already at capacity and you know that it will cost you extra time that you had in your evenings to do other things. It might look like over-explaining yourself to someone who doesn't extend the same courtesy to you, or staying in a friendship dynamic where you do most of the reaching out and the adjusting and the emotional labor, and you just tell yourself that that's how people love. It might be quieter than that. It might actually just be the thing that restores you or is supposed to restore you. The walk, the quiet hour, the one part of the day that's actually yours. Getting skipped again and again and again. Because someone else needed something first, and because something else needed handling first, and because there's always a reason, and your reasons always seem to come last. None of this is catastrophic on its own, and that's exactly what makes them easy to overlook. The thing is, a lot of this doesn't come from you not caring about yourself. It actually comes from caring too much about everyone else, which stems from you genuinely having a good heart. One that notices when someone is struggling, anticipates what people need, and moves instinctively towards keeping things steady. That's not a flaw, that's a real valuable quality. But it gets complicated when the same instinct that makes you attentive and dependable and warm can also make you completely silent about your own needs. Not because you don't have them, but because meeting them first has never felt as urgent as meeting everyone else. And when that becomes the pattern, what started as compassion ends up as self-abandonment and may cause you to act rashly down the line to course correct. That's what I mean when I say that it's misguided strength. There's nothing wrong with the impulse, it just needs somewhere to turn inward as well. But patterns are just individual moments repeated until it becomes the default response. So when you start looking at the pattern instead of the individual moment, something usually becomes clear that wasn't clear before. Here's what I want to offer as a starting point for the week. Notice before you change anything. Just look around and think about how your week went and take notes. Your audit isn't about immediate action. It's about building the habit of awareness so you stop operating in default mode. Ask yourself once a week, what did I absorb this week that wasn't mine? What did I agree to from habit rather than intention? What left me feeling slightly off and less myself? And why? It may take time to answer these if this isn't already regular practice, but you just need to get into the habit of asking these questions. Because what I've found is that the noticing itself changes something. You start to catch yourself before the yes leaves your mouth. You start to recognize the impact faster. You get better at telling the difference between a choice you made and the default you followed. That's the recalibration. Not a single decision, but a developing relationship with your own internal experience. And I'll leave you with the question that I started off with. What have you been tolerating that you've stopped questioning? The one thing that becomes so familiar that it barely registers anymore. If something came up for you while you were watching this video, I'd love to know about it. You can drop it in the comments so we can just start naming what it is that we're overlooking, because naming is where the fun begins. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.